per reporting in The Athletic, Major League Soccer is likely moving to a 5-division format when the calendar flip happens in 2027. So conferences gone, 5 divisions. What do you think about this format?
Yeah, so here are the divisions as per The Athletic. Now, I want to tell you my timeline on this. I first saw an inkling of this from Bruce McGuire, who is one of the OG American soccer bloggers, goes all the way back to like the early 2000s with his blog, De Nord. If you were old like me, you have a lot of love and respect for Bruce McGuire. Bruce is the man. Now, he posted on his Blue Sky account that he had heard from a couple of people that Minnesota United, the club he supports, he's a Minnesota guy, was going to be in the division that is outlined here: Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Columbus, which, as I told producer Jenny earlier, and got a chuckle out of her, it's the OPE division is what that might be. Or you want to call it the Norris, you want to call it the black and blue, you can do all those things. And Midwest, whatever, it's something like that. That was then not picked up. I don't know if it's the reason that they covered it, or the reason they reported on it, but Tom Bogert and Paul Tenorio went to The Athletic and posted this, which is every division as currently proposed by Major League Soccer. So you've got what looks to be a Pacific Northwest division with the Quakes, Real Salt Lake, and Colorado added. You've got a California and Texas division, which is a little bit more travel than a lot of these will have. You've got Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Columbus, like I mentioned. Then you have sort of a Northeastern division with 2 Canadian teams because they're Northeastern teams: Montreal, Toronto, Revs, Red Bulls, NYCFC, and Philly. And then you've got sort of a Southern division plus DC, which is Mid-Atlantic, DC, Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, Miami, and Orlando. Somebody's calling this the Publix division. I would say that doesn't apply because there are no Publix in DC as far as I'm aware, because I live in DC and I have never seen a Publix. But, figure out your own naming. I do think it's fun to think about what these should be named, though. That is a funny thing.
I'm curious if they'll name them or if they'll just put something generic like Southeast, Northeast, or if they'll be like the sponsorship, like you said, like it's the McDonald's Midwest.
No. I hope we don't sell sponsorships for divisions. That is icky. I was thinking that, the old school NHL way, like the Norris division, would be fun. I just don't know how you do that without upsetting a certain fan base, because if you're pulling forward like names from the past, are there enough sort of like big figures who aren't tied to one specific team that you could name the division after them? Probably not. We're going to get geographic divisions because that's what it's easiest for people to parse. Although I don't know what you call that so-called Texas division. The Southwest? I guess you call it the Southwest.
Yeah, I think that's the only real way to describe that. And you feel for basically flying over those the New Mexicos and the other state that's in between there, but just says San Jose appears to be the loser here, and they're just flying back and forth over New Mexico and Arizona is the other state, Arizona and New Mexico, to get to Texas back and forth from Southern California.
Yeah, I do see some ideas. We had In-N-Out versus Whataburger. That would be the Southwest, with California versus Texas, if you know your burgers. Crystal versus White Castle. Okay. I like what Mike Thomas is saying about my idea about naming these divisions after people, which, again, is not going to happen. I'm not pretending it's going to happen. Executives, maybe. So we could have the Abbott division, the Mark Abbott division. We could have the
Don Garber.
The Garber division, obviously. The Quartermanch division. You have the Dan Quartermanch. You have to really be.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut there.
Dan Quartermanch. Anyway, yeah, this in the way that this is being presented at The Athletic is that this is the best way for them to figure out how to sort of maintain some control on travel, have a format schedule-wise that makes sense. I'm not going to say it's ideal, because ideal is balanced. Ideal is you play everybody home and away, just like the English Premier League or most of the top leagues do. The problem you have in MLS is that there are 30 teams and you can't do it. And obviously that would also preclude you from expanding more if you were like, we're going to have to always have a balanced schedule. 30 teams, 29 times 2, Robert, is 58. You're not playing 58 regular season games. You just are not doing that. So if you want to maintain a 34-game schedule, you do this, because you play everybody in your division twice, right? So that is 10 games that you will play in your division, and then you play everybody else in the league one time, and you get to 34. That's how you do it.
I think it's interesting the way that Tom Bogert and Paul Tenorio frame this, that this is likely. Like, you don't often see that in reporting. It's like sources say this is happening or this is rumored, but saying something is likely is kind of an interesting way to frame it. But I'm looking at these. They said that they're still open. Like these divisions are not final yet. I said that maybe in this particular set of circumstances that San Jose, I was looking at a different division grouping when I said San Jose was going to Texas. They're actually
No,
in a different direction.
They
I was
lose
correct
out.
there.
They lose out in the sense that they don't get multiple games per year against the SoCal teams. And while I don't think you would say that LAFC versus San Jose is necessarily as intense a rivalry, certainly the Galaxy and San Jose have always been a rivalry in MLS going back to the earliest days of the league. And we even called it the California Classico for a while. So, that thing about rivalries and sort of how they are being impacted by this is an element of it. But I obviously think you can't be too precious about that, or you won't be able to figure this out geographically.
Yeah, I was going to say it. Looking at these different divisions as they're listed here, I can't really think of anyone else outside of San Jose that is like particularly put out or is like on an island compared to the rest of their division. I'm trying to pick. I mean, is there anyone in there that's really like, I've really been shortchanged here?
Well, okay, look, again, you kind of have to appreciate the history of MLS more than maybe a lot of new fans do to think that DC United got screwed a little bit. Because while DC stinks and, there's no guarantee they're going to get better, if you're a fan of DC United or maybe you're a fan of the Red Bulls and you appreciate what that's been, you're going to think this is not great because you're not in division with your rival. DC and Red Bulls have been rivals, again, since the beginning of the league when they were the Metro Stars because they were fairly close in geography in a league that, didn't have as many teams. Now, obviously, you've jammed Philadelphia in there, and Philly is trying to foster rivalries with teams in the Northeast. You've got NYCFC who has entered, which has become the biggest rival to the Red Bulls naturally, right? So, and again, you don't really have a defined rivalry for DC because they haven't been relevant. But if you are thinking about history, there is something to that.
Mike Thomas is saying that maybe DC might have a bone to pick, perhaps, in all that. But I don't think you can make everyone happy with this. And I did see online a joke in reference to this. It might have been a quote tweet or something of this news story yesterday. But it's like, we don't really have to memorize this because the format will probably change in a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, that is part of it too. That there is always a sense that nothing in MLS is for very long. I was going to say nothing is forever. That is absolutely true. Nothing is for very long is also a part of this deal when it comes to MLS. You never get comfortable because you never expect it to be around. And I think this is also true for the playoff format, Rob. And I see some people in the chat are kind of debating that. Like, what does a playoff format look like? Now, there is a little bit of a hint in the Athletic piece. It says nothing is done yet on that front, and they're still considering various proposals. I don't know if you have something in mind that you think makes sense when it comes to a playoff format. I don't think there's an ideal one. Let's just be honest. There's not an ideal one, but I would say that I would be fine with let's cut down on the number of teams. I just don't know that they're going to do that now with 30 sides across the league.
This is off the cuff, but I see in the reporting there's references to the Aussie rules football setup and stuff like that. There's in this athletic story, it does play out a couple different options as far as playoffs. But what comes to mind right now, I don't think it'll be implemented because it cuts a lot of teams out. But I would say, and it's not balanced schedule, obviously, but I would say playoffs would be the top 10 points getters in the whole league. Yeah. And then so it would be 5 from each. Top 10 points getters, and then the top 2 overall get a first round bye.
Man, you just again, I think it's a keep it simple, stupid kind of situation when it comes to the playoff format. But if you're doing divisions, you're going to have to absolutely incentivize teams to win their division. So you're doing more games within division. That's why the division exists. So what you're saying is the division winners have to be in. Period. Division winners have to go into the playoffs. So that's 6 division winners right out the gates. Right, so now or 5 divisions.
It's 5 divisions. So I think adding the 5 best runners, or I guess would it just be the top 2 then, or the 5 best runners up? Or
I mean, if you do top 2 in each division, you get to 10. You're obviously going to have a wild card round or a first round to get your numbers to 8, so then you can have the format that works to deliver a final. But man, I don't know. Like, again, I would like to see it kept simple. I would like to keep it relatively. I would like to keep the playoff field small to obviously bring up the value of those regular season games, which has long been a criticism of Major League Soccer. You're going to flip your calendar over. You're going to ask people to go to games that could potentially be in very cold weather. Well, they better matter. They better count, Rob. Or what are you doing here?
Yeah, indeed. And we'll follow along with this story, of course, and the ramifications it could have on Major League Soccer, and big things coming. This is in conjunction with a calendar flip, so 2027 could be a real head spinner with a calendar change and a format change.
Yeah, I mean, I also bring this in from Chris, and I don't pay enough attention to the NBA, but now that he says this, it does ring a bell. The NBA doesn't have division winners auto-qualify. It's just a matter of pure math that winning your division all but secures your playoff spot. So he's saying, like, that's just to kind of foster the rivalry within the region, I guess, and obviously more games local or somewhat regionally. And then, again, they do sort of a single table for each conference in terms of qualifying for the playoffs. Could MLS do that? Like, could they act? But this is 5, and you're not dividing this in terms of conferences. They're not saying we have divisions in the Eastern Conference and divisions in the Western Conference because 5 doesn't divide evenly. So, yeah, man, I don't know. There's some stuff to consider.
5 division winners and the 5 best also rans would be how I would do it. Because, I mean, a 10-team field, that's still a good amount of teams, but it makes it very competitive to win your division. I think that ratchets up the intensity.
You would have 5 division winners. Then your top 3-point getters are into the quarterfinals is what that would be, right? And then, or not the quarterfinals, the round of 16. And then you would have 2 teams who play off against one another or whatever. You would have to find a way. That would be 8, but you would have to find a way to get the numbers right. So 5 qualify, and then you have to play a mini round, a mini playoff between the rest of those qualifiers to get your final 3 teams to make the 8-team. I guess that would be a quarterfinal round at that point, an 8-team quarterfinal. Sorry, my math is terrible today.
I mean, you don't claim to be a math expert, and so we won't hold that against you here today, Jason. But
not 8 games. 8 games would be 16 teams. 8 teams is a quarterfinal round. So, yeah.
I was called out in the comments for having audible disdain for Major League Soccer. I just think that if we're cutting down the playoff field and every game becomes more important, a lot of those things kind of fade away. And for that commenter, my direct interaction with Major League Soccer has not been that great. In Michigan, Major League Soccer, there's no team here. It is not on the radar. You have to very specifically seek it out to have that. And the other teams I've interacted with, Chicago Fire, which when I was, in Chicago was in disarray and not necessarily a positive organization. And then the next closest one is Columbus Crew, which the league literally tried to just move away. So my personal tangible interactions with Major League Soccer wasn't great, but things like this, making the playoffs harder to get to, would add some positivity to my outlook.
Yeah, I think. Look, I've covered MLS for 20 years, or almost 20 years at this point. Like, I appreciate the league, but that doesn't mean that I don't see reasons for it to improve or areas that it can get better, or I don't think that there are things that it does wrong. It is the biggest soccer league in this country, and sort of by default, that means we're going to ask a lot of it to, again, carry forward the flag of American soccer. For better or worse, the world views American soccer through the lens of MLS. That the national team matters. The men's, I'm talking about men's game, obviously. The men's national team matters, and that can burgeon the reputation of American soccer. But really, it's about the league, right? That's how people view you. Is your league good? Is it competitive? Does it have good players? And I mean, again, just like we talked about with the NWSL, there might be a lot of things that MLS can't control that they have to fight against in terms of perception. Don't make it more complicated. Make your regular season matter. Again, you're flipping your schedule over. That's dramatic. We're going to see if fans follow.
All right, we got a couple segments to go here on our Free For All Friday. So as we transition to our next topic, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and be like Pilkman earlier in the week that became our latest MK Ultra. Be like them, become an Ultra, support the show.